Hey everyone, Jeff here from Films at Home. In today's video, we've got to talk about this horror movie that has taken the internet by storm. Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to the channel today. In this review, I'm going to be talking about a newly released indie horror movie called Skinamarink, which has gone sort of viral over the internet. Some people are calling it the scariest movie that they've ever seen. A lot of people are comparing it to things like Paranormal Activity, which were small budgets and went viral with big box office success. And a lot of other people are saying it's super boring and they can't imagine why anybody would watch it. So, it's coming to Shudder very soon. You'll be able to watch it at home if you have a subscription to Shudder. It's in theaters right now. I was able to check it out with an early screener link sent to me by the producer, and so I want to talk about this movie because I think there's a lot to cover. A lot of you have asked if I've seen it, and I want to just talk about what I saw and what I experienced. So some quick background on the movie Skinamarink. This is directed by Kyle Edward Ball. This is his first feature film. He previously had a 30-minute short, which was expanded into for this full feature called Heck, which has been on YouTube for a while, and he made this movie for $15,000. Now the story is he went to Reddit, he asked people what some of their childhood nightmares were like, and he drew a lot of inspiration from that to make this movie. It premiered at some film festivals over the last year, got picked up by a production company and a distribution company, got picked up by IFC Midnight and then Shudder, and actually has had a fairly decent theatrical release. For a movie on $15,000 in budget, it's made almost $2 million just at the box office, never mind whatever deals they got from Shudder and streaming rights. So I'd say it's a huge horror movie success, which is why people are likening it to Paranormal Activity, made on a shoestring budget, made a ton of money, made Jason Blum, basically Blumhouse, what it is today. Also things like Blair Witch Project. It's in that sort of vein, at least in terms of the marketing and the box office, but it's a totally different type of movie than you've probably ever seen. So I watched this one at home, although it is in theaters. I'm not able to get out to the theaters right now with my daughter having just been born, but I was able to watch it at home, lights off and volume up, as they suggested. And I'll tell you what, this movie is one of the most interesting movies that I've ever watched because I think it takes huge risks and it's so experimental that I understand why some people hated it and some people didn't love it at all, and I understand why some people were so engrossed in it. So while watching this movie, you never see any of the characters' faces, of which there are four. There's basically two children and a mom and a dad, and the children are in the house and mom and dad disappear and they start to hear some creepy things. They're hearing voices. There's creepy stuff happening in the house, and these two kids are sort of just trying to comfort each other through this, really a childhood nightmare experience. Mom and dad are gone and all of the doors in the house are gone. So they have no way to get out. They're stuck inside the house. Now the movie relies heavily on audio. It's very audio driven because visually you'll get minutes at a time where you're literally just looking at a Lego set on the ground or a TV screen on in a dark room or the top of a doorway and a ceiling with some stuff happening in the background. We often get viewpoint from either the ceiling or from the floor, almost as if you are the child. Like you get that viewpoint of you looking up at doorways and, sort of being smaller. It definitely plays on every child's worst fears, and that is this nightmare scenario that they're trying to portray here with this film. Now, it's definitely not going to be for everyone because as much as it is a film, yes, it's also a borderline like visual art exhibit. Like you could put something like this in a museum and say this is a piece of art and this is a portrayal of childhood trauma or nightmares or even childhood abuse in some ways. I can see those different themes throughout and how different people may interpret this movie. But as a movie itself, like it has a plot. It's sort of a loose plot. It has it must be 10 pages of dialogue total, and it's a lot of just sort of atmosphere. And we talk about elevated horror, things like The Witch, where it's a slow burn, it's very atmospheric, but you've got characters, you've got plot, you've got shots outside of a house with this 1990s suburban look and feel. Skinamarink doesn't have that. Skinamarink is locked into this one area. It builds atmosphere, but it's such a tight atmosphere. It doesn't really expand past literally a couple of rooms. And honestly, I found myself sort of, I watched it and then I was like, I feel like I could have skipped through this at times. Like it's an hour and 40 minutes long, and that's 99 minutes, almost 100 minutes. I think this would have been far more effective if it was cut down to 75 or 80 minutes. You cut 20, 25 minutes off the top, and it would have been a little bit of a tighter story, just as scary, but you could have eliminated a lot of the atmosphere building, because there were times where literally I was like, okay, it's been, 3 minutes here and nothing has happened. Yeah, it's building a sense of like dread and there's a little bit of that nightmarish feeling, but it was boring to a degree. Some of the scares are pretty good, although they're all pretty much audio jump scares. Like there aren't very visual scares. It's almost like it's everybody's whispering, it's very quiet, and then they crank the volume up to 10. I find that personally annoying. I'd rather a visual scare than just an audio scare, especially if you're wearing headphones or something, or you have your home theater and you're like trying to balance it to get the dialogue up clear, and then bang, they hit you with this, loud noise for 2 seconds. It's almost more annoying than scary, especially as somebody who's like, I'm pretty well versed in horror movies. I'm not really sensitive to that kind of thing. So I wasn't super scared by like the jump scare moments that a lot of people are calling out. But I did think that there is something there. There's something there. It's definitely an interesting debut. Kyle Edward Ball here took a huge swing, and I would say it's a hit considering he's got distribution. It's been talked about a lot, and I think that's because it does play on people's childhood fears. And like if you had childhood trauma, or God forbid, were a victim of like child abuse, or you had some issues with your parents, or you ever just felt abandoned. Honestly, even me, just as a child who had a very good childhood, no issues at all, like a great childhood, a great home we lived in, there is something scary about waking up in the middle of the night as a 4 or 5 year old and like needing to walk down the hallway to mom and dad's room because you just had a nightmare, and you're like almost afraid to wake them up because you don't, there is something scary about that middle of the night in this suburban home that like a child feels. And I felt that. You can sort of get yourself into that, but I think it's going to take a lot for a lot of people, and this is definitely not going to be something that appeals to the mainstream whatsoever. So you really have to sort of buy in and psych yourself up. And I felt myself, I was getting scared, and there were some moments, but then because it took too long to develop, I would lose that, and then I'd have to be brought back in. I will say I think the most effective part of the movie is probably the last 15 or 20 minutes. There's some really effective use of a little bit expanded environment. There's a lot more audio going on. We develop the characters a little bit. We sort of get that conclusion of what's happening in this house. That part was very interesting, and that's why I think if they could cut this down, the first 60 to 80 minutes of this movie were just too far stretched out. If you make that 30 or 40 minutes and you make 20 or 30 minutes at the end, you're sort of ending and you're wrapping up the story, I think you have a much more effective movie there. It's a little bit tighter and more effective, and you won't lose people because you can definitely lose your buy-in to this atmosphere they're building because of the very long time in between action. So I'll say this, Skinamarink, I give huge credit to anybody who makes a feature film and has successful distribution like this. It obviously has a ton of hype. Kyle Edward Ball is someone to watch. If he can make atmospheric horror like this and continue to get better and expand his work, I'd say he's someone to watch. This could be a really interesting director up and coming here. But this movie needed a little bit of work. I'll say for most mainstream horror fans, this isn't going to work for you. If you like the real slow burn stuff, this is slow burn turned up to an 11. This is as slow a movie as I've ever seen. This is up there with some of David Lynch's experimental stuff. Like, you need to be really into that type of cinema in order to enjoy Skinamarink. If you're not, you're going to hate this movie. So I give it like a slight recommendation. Like, I think it's worth watching. I think it's an interesting piece of art and film, but I have a feeling that most of the mainstream people who may follow me or stumble upon this on Shudder, even if you are a hardcore horror fan, I'm not sure you'll make it through the first 10 or 15 minutes, a lot of you. But if you do make it through it and it has that impact on you, that's great, because I do think for the right person, this movie could be extremely scary, extremely impactful. And so you just sort of have to see in the first 5 or 10 minutes, can you buy in? Is this connecting with you? If it is, you'll enjoy it. If it's not, you might as well turn it off. Thanks for watching this review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do want to check out Skinamarink, you can buy tickets, watch it in theaters at select theaters right now. It's also coming to Shudder on February 2nd, so if you have Shudder, you can watch it there. And then I would be shocked if this doesn't get a physical media release at some point, most likely a Blu-ray. Shudder and IFC Midnight are very good about releasing their higher profile titles on Blu-ray anyway, and this is a very high profile title that I'm sure they're going to want to try to make some more money off of with physical sales. So definitely expect a Blu-ray DVD release at some point in the future, maybe in the spring, summer, once they run its course on Shudder. But hope you enjoyed the review. If you want more videos like this, more stuff on movies, physical media, collecting physical media topics, all that good stuff, subscribe to the channel. Links are in the description, and you can also find me on social media. All those links are down below as well. So thank you for watching this review. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and stay healthy out there, and I'll talk to you soon.